Yeah, it's starting to slip.
Oh,
So you may have to put a see that little
okay.
line right there?
Yeah.
Um, see how that low that is?
Yes.
Watch slip.
So that was Bob. Give me a rundown on what my dad's stock 103 is doing. He said the clutch may need adjustment. Yes, sir. So Adam, this is a stock 103. It's a 2013 Road King with a stock 103. I have no clue what to do to it. What do you have?
So as a 103, we've got a bunch of different options. I think what we're going to end up doing in this is a bolt-in cam and reliability upgrade, meaning it's going to have, we're going to put the emphasis on the oiling system, making sure everything is working properly, making sure everything is in spec currently. And while we're doing that, a simple bolt-in cam is going to have tremendous gains on this. I mean, I would expect a minimum of 20 foot-pounds and 20 horsepower just by putting the correct bolt-in cam in.
Okay.
So, and that's going to work with the stock cylinder head and the top end pretty much left alone.
My dad, he's turning 70, and one of the things he asked was will it have better throttle response?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, we have two cams that we could pick between. We have the 525 and we have the 528. The 520.
The Red Shift 525?
Yeah, these are Red Shift cams.
Okay.
And they're all made in-house here at Zippers in Elkridge.
Okay.
The 525 is a cam we've had for probably about 10 years now. It gives you the maximum amount of power if you shift by like 4,500 RPMs.
Okay.
I really like that cam because even at 15, 1,600 RPMs, it just has tremendous throttle response. It just takes off.
Right.
But because your father is in the South,
right,
and the speed limits are higher in the South, and if he's riding with friends, they may be riding at a mile per hour, which would necessitate him to really jump into the 528. Okay. Now, I understand it's not going to be going any crazy mile per hour, but the 528 shifts it to a little bit more mid-range to top-end power, but still giving you very good bottom end.
Okay.
And what that's going to give him is much better throttle response at any RPM over where he's at. But it'll give him the ability to cruise at 90, 95 miles an hour and still be able to hit the throttle in 6th gear and take off.
Oh, wow.
So, these chassis are only good for so much. So what we try to do is maximize that power in the range where the rider is going to be using it.
Okay.
So really you could go between the two, but I feel given where he's at and the fact that he rides with friends, the 528 is going to be the best option for him.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because I know a lot of his buddies have upgraded recently and bought inmate bikes, Milwaukee 8 bikes.
Oh, yeah.
And, and a lot of guys are still riding around on these bikes.
There's a lot of twin cams out there. And a twin cam is a very good running motorcycle. And with a couple key little pieces that we put in here, it's going to be a great running motorcycle.
Right. Okay.
So.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, man. Like, I just don't want him to think that he has to go and buy like a brand new bike because this is a totally capable motorcycle. Or even just, you guys in general can definitely have a nice running twin cam and not necessarily feel that you have to upgrade to a Milwaukee 8 right away. But then they have all the stuff you need for Milwaukee 8s anyway.
I mean, you're not going to keep up with a Muscle 128 with a bolt-in cam and a 103.
Right.
But in general, riding around with friends, this is going to make this so much more livable, so much more lively. Okay. It's going to mean he's not going to have to downshift to pass.
Okay.
I think it's just going to be a much better package overall. It's going to be in the realm of a Milwaukee 8 with a cam by the time we get done with it. It's not going to make quite as much peak horsepower, but it's going to be a lot closer to an M8 with a cam than where it currently sits right now. Now, this being a late 103 twin cam, we can make this run very, very well. Okay. So it's a good motorcycle. So basically, what we're getting ready to do is we have to take the exhaust system off, the air cleaner assembly. We're going to empty the cam chest, pull the lifters, the push rods, and we're going to go one extra step, and we're going to remove the rocker arms because we actually want to check the clearance in there and just make sure that everything in your oil system is working to the maximum.
Okay.
We want to make sure that there's no issues.
Okay.
So anything that we find that's a problem, we're going to fix.
Right.
But otherwise, we're going to try to keep this as more of a budget-minded deal,
Right.
Where you're going to get a big jump in power without just arbitrarily throwing everything that you can buy at it.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of products out there that we'll talk about during the build.
Yes.
There are better oil pumps, there are better pieces, but you know, in this instance, if everything checks out, this has a pretty good oiling system. So there's only certain things that we really want to replace.
Okay.
As they got to the end of the 103 twin cam, even the 110s, I think they really had a lot sorted out.
Okay.
So, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to tear it down, you know, predominantly for reliability. Power is, of course, what the rider's going to feel and be very happy about. But overall, our goal is to make this a much more reliable and just easy and fun to ride package.
Sweet. I think he's going to definitely enjoy that.
I think he's going to love it.
Right.
He's going to be shocked.
Oh yeah.
So
awesome. Well, definitely get out of you guys' way and, you know, let you guys get to it.
all right. Thank
Appreciate
you very
it,
much.
sir. All right. So I see you guys have it all torn apart. How was everything?
Okay, so we've done a full inspection. You know, when we tore this down, we wanted to make sure that the oiling system was working properly. We found that the crankshaft has between 3 to 3.5 thousandths run out, which, given the mileage and the age, is perfectly fine. We have no problems with that. We've inspected the tappet bores. Everything looks good. There's really no signs of lack of oil in the engine, which is very good. The valve tips look good. So it's a very good base to be able to do improvements on, because everything hits the numbers.
Right.
So if you want to look back here, these are the parts that we're not going to reuse on the build.
Okay.
As you know, we're going to upgrade the camshafts to a Red Shift 528. We are upgrading the cam plate to a billet cam door with proper bronze bushings and a hand-sealed oil pressure relief valve. The cam chain tensioners, we're going to upgrade to a dual piston cam chain tensioner that we produce in-house.
Okay.
What we found of importance when we took it apart, the inner one was pumped up. See how solid that is?
Right.
And the outer one was not.
Okay.
So what that means, this is the outer tensioner right here. It's the first thing you see when you take it apart.
Right.
Effectively, this being not pumped up means that there's air in the system at that point.
Right.
So when you first fire it up, your cranking compression is not going to be exactly right, and your cam timing is going to be a little bit off.
Okay.
Now the hope is the oil pressure will come up and fill this, but I don't know. I don't particularly like it when we take it apart and find that there's no pressure.
Okay. So why does the zippers cam chain tensioners have dual pistons and this is single?
Correct.
Okay, so
I'll show you the inside of this real quick.
Okay.
I haven't had this open, so it's probably a mess. There's a single piston down inside there.
Okay.
And you can even see down inside there's a ring where this piston has been riding.
Okay.
Now it's just a flat bottom, and this shoe actually, when it's installed, it wants to rock as it goes back and forth, because the chain, you know, nothing is smooth in a twin cylinder like this.
Right.
It's always going to have pulsations.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a single piston like this and it's rocking back and forth, you can actually rock it off of the base, and then that base will allow a little bit of air to get inside this hydraulic unit. So the advantage of the dual piston cam chain tensioners are simple. When you have two hydraulic bodies, that shoe can rock back and forth, and the two hydraulics can oppose one another.
Okay.
So one can actually go in as the other extends.
Yeah, so it compensates for the other one.
Single rocking, you end up with two doing this.
Okay.
And because of that, it is far less likely to get airbound, because it's not going to allow air into the system.
Okay.
We've also put a little bit more pressure on the cam chain to keep everything
in time.
In time.
Okay, sweet.
So we've seen as much as a 5 horsepower gain just by changing the cam chain tensioners.
Oh, wow.
And it's not
So it's a
that
gain?
It's a gain. And
Okay.
it's not that it makes power. It's that this is effectively losing power. We are replacing the cam bearings just out of practice when we do the cam swap. And we're going to replace the drive sprocket. And if you want to see, this piece right here it goes on the end of the crankshaft, and it drives the cams, which drives the whole valve train. Now the problem with this part is they almost never fail, but they are very loose on the shaft. So you can see the amount of movement and just the sprocket to the crankshaft.
So now, that little bit of movement would make a difference?
So you can argue that once this gets pinched down, it's not going to move.
Right.
But we have absolutely seen where that back and forth movement can cause your cranking compression to go a little bit haywire, and it can even cause noise. Because even though this is just a bolt-in cam, we're trying to fix all the little things that ultimately affect your throttle response.
Okay.
And affect the power that you perceive out of the engine.
Right. I didn't realize these small little inconsistencies can affect like your throttle response. So like that little bit moving around, and you said the cam chain tensioners,
yeah, that's gonna affect your throttle response.
Throttle response as well. Wow.
So the more accurate and more tight your cam valve train is, the better your throttle response is going to be. So there's actually quite a few pieces that ultimately affect your final throttle response. I mean, these late throttle by wire twin cam 103s, they really do run very good from the factory.
Right.
But once you fix a couple small things, with a relatively small build like this, the gains and the throttle response is so much better.
Right.
It makes all of this worthwhile.
Right.
So it ran good before, but it's going to run great when we're done with it.
Right.
At 20,000 miles, I believe that you should be replacing your lifters. Now, that's what they always said on the Evo days. I think that's been removed from the manual for twin cam. But if you look at these lifters at 19, almost 20,000 miles, you can see that the surface is very highly degraded. Now, in the manual, they call that fretting, where the original surface starts to shed away and you see a much duller surface underneath. Now, looking at the cams, this is not a good thing, but it's not like this is catastrophically failing in front of us. Will it fail over time? Absolutely, but any lifter will fail if you run it past its service life. The final thing to look at is the rocker arms. So we pulled the rocker arms so that we can retain the factory push rods. In a situation like this where we're dealing with a bolt-in cam, you absolutely could use a quick install. You could use any type of adjustable push rod, but we felt it was better it's a better use of the money to go in and look at the rocker arms, make sure that your bushings are in clearance, and if everything looks good, then you just retain your factory push rods. You don't have to get into adjusting them. And I think in this level of kit, where we're just doing a reliability and cam upgrade, the stock push rod works very well. It's very stiff. It's a great push rod. So on this set, we found 2 rocker arm bushings that needed to be replaced because they were out of spec. Right. They're both on the push rod side, which is to be expected. And again, these just wear out over time. Right. As the oil pressure goes away, they wear out much faster. Right. So if we had taken this apart and found purple rocker shafts and issues with oiling throughout the system, I would have expected a lot of these bushings to have been burned up. Okay. But again, this one was working well, so we only had 2.
Is there any specific reason why they get that much play in it, or? No,
it's just a wear item. You have a steel shaft and you have a bronze bushing. It's going to wear. Okay. The lower the oil pressure to the top end, the faster it's going to wear. So if we had taken this apart and found purple shafts and just issues of low oil everywhere, I would have expected this to have 4 or more bushings that were worn out. Okay. So the amount of wear is directly related to the mileage and the amount of oil going to the top end.
Oh, okay. Right. So I've always heard people say allow valve train or whatever. And I've heard people say like some cams are nosy or whatever. But can the bushing clearance be what people actually hear most of the time when people complain about?
Well,
I mean,
it's a culmination of everything.
Right.
So if you've had an oiling problem, you could have bushings that are out of spec. You have your drive sprocket on the end of the crank is moving back and forth.
Right.
Your cam chain tensioners are not fully pumped up, so it's not doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Maybe you aren't getting all of the oil to the lifters like you're supposed to.
Right.
It's kind of a chain reaction.
Okay.
So
a couple of different things.
You can take what would be a quiet cam and a good install,
Yeah.
and it can make a lot of noise if all of these other pieces are bad.
Right.